Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're taking a structured, seriously analytical, yet utterly chilling look at a collection of first-hand accounts straight from the mountains of Himachal Pradesh. Today we're exploring an anthology of terror. It's a deep dive into those unseen, supernatural boundaries that ordinary people sometimes cross, and usually with totally devastating consequences. These aren't just your standard campfire tales. No, these are intricate, documented accounts of real people brushing up against forces they simply couldn't understand.
So let me ask you this. Do you believe that some paths are actually guarded by death? Because if there's one massive, overarching theme in the source material we're looking at today, it's exactly that. Arrogance against the unknown, it often demands a terrible, completely unpayable price. You see, when you walk into these mountains, you're not just walking on dirt and stone. You are literally stepping into an ecosystem governed by very old rules. And if you break them, well, the pushback is fierce.
Moving on to Section 1, the 2001 Cursed Trip. Let's look at a truly fatal mountain journey. We've got this account from a guy named Ravinder. Now, he and 5 of his college buddies decided to go on a motorcycle trip to Himachal Pradesh, but they made a massive, critical error before they even hit the gas. They set out right at dusk, completely ignoring the unspoken rules of mountain travel. And, as we can trace on the timeline here, by nightfall things took an absolutely impossible turn. They basically got trapped in a geographic loop near Salapar. I mean, they'd pass a milestone reading Salapar 8 kilometers, and then bam, they'd see it again and again, no matter how far they drove. Totally exhausted and stranded in the dark, they were finally approached by this mysterious older couple who offered them shelter in a secluded hut. Now get this, the couple specifically warned them about traveling at night, and they made a huge point that one of the female friends shouldn't have left her hair untied in the dark, which is a massive cultural taboo in that region. But, typical of a group of young, overconfident friends, they just brushed off the warnings.
Which brings us to the really terrifying focal point of the story. Once they got inside this mysterious hut, the group was offered local meat and liquor. For the friends, they eagerly dug right in. But as they ate and drank, they noticed something physically impossible happening. Literally, no matter how much they consumed, they never felt full. The food wasn't actually nourishing them. It was enchanted. They kept eating until they literally passed out, only to wake up the next morning back out on the road near their bikes. It was as if the hut had never even existed. So what actually happened to those 4 friends?
And this brilliantly illustrates the fatal cost of indulging the unknown. Those 4 friends who went ahead and consumed that cursed food, they all met a tragic, incredibly sudden end between 2014 and 2020, mostly through inexplicable out-of-nowhere heart attacks. And that female friend? She vanished entirely, literally never heard from again. But meanwhile, the 2 friends, which includes Ravinder, who flat out refused to eat or drink anything in that hut, they are the only 2 still alive today. It is such a chilling testament to the rules of the supernatural. Simply put, do not take what is offered by the unseen. Okay, on to Section 2, Bhimu's terrifying end. This is all about a single, fatal wish. Let's jump back to 1999, to an old, deserted mountain bazaar that would completely shut down by 8 p.m. every night. A young girl named Asha made a super casual but wildly arrogant wish. She was kind of mocking local superstitions around Valentine's Day and just blurted out, "If someone gives us a ghost, even that is enough." Now, in the mountains, you never, ever extend an open invitation to the unseen. Why? Because those unseen forces immediately answered her. Within just a few weeks, her brother, Bhimu, underwent this absolutely terrifying behavioral shift. He just stopped speaking entirely. His eyes would bulge out with this angry, unblinking stare. And the wildest part? Whenever Asha tried to leave the house, Bhimu would physically grab her. He'd forcibly prevent her from stepping a foot outside. Now, his father ended up beating him mercilessly for this disrespect, but Bhimu? He just silently endured the beatings. He didn't even flinch. It was like he literally couldn't feel the pain. His family was just completely bewildered. Why on earth was he acting like this?
Well, the answer is hands down one of the most horrific twists in our explainer today. Bhimu was actually dead that entire time. Let that sink in. A few days later, his family found his decaying corpse hidden behind a rock up on the mountain. His tongue had been brutally ripped out, which perfectly explains why he couldn't speak. In this incredible, mind-bending act of supernatural sacrifice, Bhimu's spirit had actually possessed his own dead body. He animated it just enough to stay at the house and physically block his sister from walking out that door, so she wouldn't fall victim to the entity she had so foolishly invited in. Unbelievable, right?
Moving to Section 3, When the Spirit Possesses. Let's look at the story of the vengeful bride.
So take the really chilling case of Shivani, a modern bride from Delhi who was visiting her in-laws out on the terraced fields of Himachal. She was having a great time taking photos, wandering totally alone in the fields during the forbidden evening hours, once again breaking those local rules of boundary and time. And her blatant disregard for those rules, it resulted in a severe possession packed with staggering physical impossibilities. Get this, when her husband just playfully tapped her on the shoulder, she literally flipped backward, scaling straight up a vertical wall, like something out of a horror movie. Then she punched him so hard in the neck, he fell unconscious instantly. And when the rest of the family tried to intervene, she started speaking in this deep, terrifyingly authentic local mountain accent, completely alien to a city girl from Delhi. And she flat out demanded that absolutely nobody was allowed to leave the house.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer arrogance of the entity. The family was desperate, right? So they brought in a highly respected local priest to perform an exorcism. But the possessed bride, she didn't cower at all. She stood there, perfectly relaxed, stared the priest right in the eyes and said, "Look, Pandit, I'm here for a few days. Don't make a noise." Just wow. The pure menace and utter confidence in that single statement absolutely shattered the priest's resolve. He literally packed up his holy water and fled the house in terror, admitting to the family that he was completely out of his depth.
As it turned out, the entity was a spirit named Mahima. She was a local woman who had actually been murdered by her own in-laws years prior simply because they were annoyed by her obsessive habits. So, possessing the new bride, Mahima forced the family into this totally bizarre, torturous routine. Anyone entering the house, they had to meticulously clean and mop the floors. The bride was constantly forced to dress up in saris and apply heavy makeup. Even the husband was ordered to bring daily gifts of artificial jewelry. It was basically a supernatural hostage situation, and she was enforcing the exact same habits that had gotten her murdered in the first place.
Which brings us to Section 4, Returning from Death's Touch, the ultimate price of arrogance.
Let's pivot right back to Ravinder, the guy who survived our first story. Years later, he'd actually become a pastor, dedicating his whole life to his faith. But in doing so, he kind of developed this dangerous spiritual overconfidence. A friend called him up one day to warn him that a very dark entity was nearby. But Ravinder? He just casually dismissed it. He was standing on the side of a wide, totally empty road and boldly declared over the phone, "God is with me, nothing will happen." He directly challenged the boundary.
And the immediate aftermath was completely devastating. Just a blink of an eye after he made that boast, literally seconds later, a speeding black Alto car just materialized out of thin air. It bypassed all obstacles and rammed directly into Ravinder and his wife. And the driver? Totally vanished. The damage was horrific. Ravinder's toes were literally crushed into powder, his ribs were shattered, and his wife suffered a punctured kidney. He ended up spending 2 grueling years completely bedridden. Just like that, his arrogance was instantly and violently shattered.
Section 5. Never mess with the unseen. Respecting the boundary.
As we look at the connective tissue binding all these incredible accounts together, so the crucial point is this: words have tremendous power. Boundaries, whether that means traveling at night, letting your hair down in the dark, or just mocking a spirit, they absolutely must be respected. Never, ever challenge the supernatural, regardless of your personal beliefs. The unseen world described in these sources, it honestly doesn't care about your logic, your modern sensibilities, or your spiritual ego. It operates on its own ancient rules, and it always, always demands respect. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on today. If you decide to ignore the rules, if you cross the boundary into the unknown simply because you think you know better or you just don't believe in it, who will protect you when the unseen inevitably pushes back? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your minds open, respect the boundaries around you, and I will see you in the next deep dive.